Hello and welcome to another episode of Badman Reviews. And today we're going to be taking a look at some very bad things. The Legend of Zelda franchise has been well known for having some amazing boss fights during its long, at this point, 34-year lifespan. But you can't be around for that long and not have a few faults here and there. And Zelda is no different. There are a plethora of bad bosses, and even mini-bosses and sub-bosses, but today we'll be focusing specifically on main bosses, not any of the sub or side or mid ones, and we'll be focusing specifically on the main line of Zelda games, not the CDI games, and we won't be talking about a few games that I haven't played like Zelda 2 or any of the Four Swords adventures. So let's dive straight into some really bad Zelda bosses. We start off with one of the most beloved Zelda games, A Link to the Past, and surprisingly, this is the only boss on this list from that series. So it's really showing off that Link to the Past had some great boss designs, but the creation of this one boss has killed me for ages. Moldorm is a worm. A giant worm, and overall, the boss isn't anything special. You can even easily figure out how to fight the boss just from a quick glance, which is a great thing, but it makes for a really boring fight, where it's not really challenging and becomes very annoying once you find yourself getting bumped into these holes and having to restart the entire fight from the start. Now, this isn't a horrible hindering thing until you're one hit away from winning and make a mistake, falling to a frustrating restart. But what I find more annoying than having to restart this boss fight, or its simplicity, is the fact that Nintendo has found Moldorm to be such a fantastic boss that they need to bring it back over and over and over again. Not only does Moldorm show up in A Link to the Past, but he also appears as one of the nightmares in Link's Awakening. He also shows up twice in A Link Between Worlds as a boss and a sub-boss for Lorule Castle, once again as a boss for the Fire Temple in Triforce Heroes, and even in Wind Waker as a form of Puppet Ganon. Come on, give us some new fights and stop recycling Moldorm boss fights. We don't want to keep playing the same shit over and over again. We want new, exciting, and fun, not worm flailing around on the ground while we smack its ass. A lot of these lower entry bosses don't suffer from bad design or being bad in general, just from being super boring, and Goma is a huge, easily visible way to see this, cause it can't get much more boring than this swing, 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 and it's time to die. That's this boss in a nutshell. Like, you couldn't have done anything else besides make me swing like a monkey 3 times and then hit his eye with a sword a few times. I get it. It's the first boss, but like, just anything, please. At least Goma in Ocarina of Time had some different moves of jumping around the arena and moving around and also spawning babies. It's a fight that's interesting and can be challenging the first time you play it, and much easier as you learn tricks to beat him faster in consecutive playthroughs. While this Goma is, in scientific terms, dumb. Now that we're done talking about a Wind Waker boss, let's move on to the next boss. Let's see here. The next boss is a Wind Waker boss. Ajala, a giant fat ghost. Another one of those boring bosses with nothing super cool about them, but on top of being boring, he's just super monotonous. After throwing this massive ghost at a wall, he bursts into a ton of small ghosts, and now it's hack and slash the game. Run in circles, killing as many of these ghosts as you can till he eventually forms back together. Do this over and over and over again till all the ghosts are dead and the boss is beat. The idea of a giant ghost boss is cool, but this just wasn't the kind of design that I was hoping for or really wanted to play. I'm not going to lie, I wanted to just put like every Breath of the Wild boss on this list as like one single entry due to how much I was disappointed in all the different boring variations of the same boss. But that just seems like a cop-out, and a bit too mean, I guess. I really do enjoy the different fights in the 4 Divine Beasts. I have to give some credit for being challenging and having unique mechanics for each of them. But Master Koga, on the other hand, I don't even know what to say about this besides Would you like to play a game? A game about waiting all the time. Every single phase of this boss fight requires you to sit and wait. First, you have to wait for his shield to go down to shoot him and make a rock fall on his head. Then after that phase is done, wait for 2 spinning rocks to line above his head. Then lastly, you have to wait for him to throw a metal block at you so you can throw it back at him and hurt him. It's just waiting. There's no challenge or anything puzzling about it. It's just dumb. Do better, Nintendo. You're better than this. You've made some great shit in the past, but the dungeons and bosses in Breath of the Wild were a huge disappointment to me. Don't get me wrong, I love Breath of the Wild. I just have some strong feelings about specific things in that game. Now, something that almost all of us can agree upon is that Ocarina of Time's water temple sucks. Actually, most water temples suck somehow. But Ocarina of Time's water temple has a special kind of hatred in the community. And after all the work and effort to get through the horrible dungeon designs, you're matched with a hugely disappointing boss. I mean, look at this. It's fucking water. This boss is as badly thought out as the dungeon itself. I mean, come on. You should have just put this in a smaller arena and made it the mini-boss. Like, look me in the eyes and tell me what looks more boss-like. This or this. And on top of how boring of an idea this boss is, this boss only has one move, and that's that it grabs you and locks you into a long animation for a period of time where you can't do anything, and then it throws you at a wall. And on top of even that, if you hookshot the boss into the corner, you can just stab the shit out of him until he dies, making this whole dungeon a pointless encounter with nothing enjoyable from it at all. Except Dark Link, he's cool, I like him. Ask most of the Zelda community what the worst Zelda boss is, and most of them will come back with this specific guy that we're about to talk about. And I have to say, I think he's pretty sucky, but he's not the worst, so I'm gonna defend him a little bit here, but don't get me wrong, he still sucks a lot, and he deserves to be on this list. The Imprisoned, a boss fight that has been given great negative reception from the fanbase. It deserves it, let's not get that wrong. The Imprisoned is a badly designed scenario. Having to fight this thing over and over again gets very annoying and becomes something you dread. But imagine if The Imprisoned was just one single fight. As a singular fight, The Imprisoned is actually a decently cool idea. A timed boss that's giant and has you slowly chip away at it to knock it down so you can get on top of it, so you can beat away at it. Overall, it's kind of like a Shadow of the Colossus fight. It's a great idea, but it does have a few faults. Its damaging pulses at its feet can become very annoying to deal with. It's already hard enough to follow the Imprisoned around to swipe at its feet when its stomping and moving adds a damaging shockwave. And it becomes even more annoying when you get knocked off the cliff and have to get back up, and it just becomes tiresome. Also, having the Imprisoned fall over and getting stuck behind it so you can't hit its front causes another annoyance where you have to jump off the cliff or find another way around before, he stands it back up. And it never works that way. You get to his front and you're like, sweet, now I can start hitting him. But nope, he stands right back up right in front of your face and you're like, fuck, man, why? The biggest issue, though, obviously, is having to fight this thing over and over again. It's boring. No one wants to fight the same boss multiple times in a game, especially when the changes to the fight aren't that different. I have to say, this boss is just annoying and not an enjoyable experience when you want to go back to play Skyward Sword, even when you enjoy the game like I did. I still believe that if the Imprisoned only showed up once, he wouldn't have been as hated by the community. Definitely wouldn't have been making anyone's top 10 lists, but definitely not as hated. But overall, the Imprisoned, as he is now, is a pretty shitty boss fight. Once again, we enter a water temple. a water temple in one of my favorite Zelda games. And yeah, it's bad. Maybe even worse than the Ocarina of Time water temple, but that's a debate for another day, because I would have to play them both again. Anyways, what we're here to talk about is the boss, and I'm sure you all saw this coming. Maybe a bit later than now, but for sure, you knew it would be coming. Gjorg is one horribly designed boss fight. For an era where 3D gaming was just becoming the norm and we were still learning to handle things in a three-dimensional environment, this boss just shits the bed in every aspect. Having a fast-moving boss that constantly swims below you makes for such a frustrating encounter. The way Gjorg moves and how the camera locks onto him makes this encounter extremely frustrating to deal with. 80% of the fight, you can hardly get a good sightline on him, and when you finally do, the bad lock-on mechanic of the Zoro blades causes you to usually miss your shots. It's also frustrating because to get a good sightline of Gjorg, most of the time you need to get close to the edge of the arena, which makes you an easy target for him to knock you into the water and damage you. Getting out of the water also becomes a task in itself because you don't know where Gjorg is to try to run away from him, and if you try locking onto him to find him, well, now it becomes impossible to actually escape the water because of how the player moves while locked onto an enemy. This is an issue not just when getting knocked into the water, but even after purposely jumping in to damage him yourself. Thankfully, the fight was adjusted in the 3DS version to make it a more enjoyable experience with better camera controls, but it doesn't fix the overall issues with this fight, sadly. It really pains me to have to put two bosses from one of my favorite Zelda games on this list. Trust me, I truly love Oracle of Ages. It's an amazing game, but these two bosses coming up just can't go without being brought up, with the annoying mechanics and frustrating fights. First up is Head Thwomp. Head Thwomp is well ahead, floating in the air, and its mechanics become fairly obvious once you enter. Hey, I got bombs in this dungeon and this boss has a huge hole in its head. Better start dropping bombs in there while it's a certain color. Congrats, you figured out the entire point of this fight. Now do it. I dare you. Try. At first, it's simple. Ride the platforms around in a circle and drop bombs in its head whenever he turns red. But each time you drop a bomb in the head, it gets faster and faster. And by the time you're dropping the third bomb in, things just start to become a guessing game. Should I drop it in now or wait half a millisecond because everyone counts here? And when you drop a bomb in the wrong color, the boss just starts doing different attacks to throw you off, making putting bombs in his head even harder. There is one strategy that you can do to throw bombs from the side of the map instead of taking the rotating platforms, but it's still not easy, and guessing when to start running and to throw the bomb from that distance for the third bomb throw is still an annoying task that will have you walking into the corner of the map crying while you dodge fireballs and wait for your next opportunity to toss a bomb. And this dumb asshole's face just isn't helping at all. The other boss from Oracle of Ages that we're here to talk about is an interesting idea that seems cool at first, but quickly derails and loses its touch very quickly. Meet Smog, a bunch of small clouds that you must use the Cane of Sumeria to create blocks and cause them to form back together into its main form to damage. Once again, the first few puzzles here are super easy, but closer to the end, you can find yourself screaming at your Game Boy because Smog just never wants to work right. The amount of times I've tried placing a block in a spot thinking, okay, this'll put him here to force him to go this way, just for him to find some other way to go around for no apparent reason, is way too high. On top of that, sometimes you need to make them hop across multiple blocks, which just doesn't work right most of the time and can even cause them to despawn and respawn back where they started, making you have to redo everything you already did. Like, what other Zelda boss is there that has a reset button to fix shit if you mess it up that bad? Like, that's how bad this boss is. You need a reset button just in case. I'd like a reset button to reset this fight out of existence. I mean, if you're following a guide and you know exactly how to do each puzzle, it becomes much easier, but then that just breaks the point of the fight in the first place, because now it's not a challenge at all and the boss isn't hard to kill. The only challenge is the puzzles, and well, they just suck. So if you get rid of them, then you're just kind of left with nothing anyways. So I'm going to be very straightforward with you for this last fight. I don't actually know if this is considered a boss fight. I mean, every single Zelda wiki I've looked up has listed this as a boss fight, but it doesn't feel like it. That's how bad this boss fight is. I'm confused on if this is actually a boss fight. And you know what? Putting it this high on the list might just be a little self-centered of myself, seeing as how much I hate this game in general, but let's just get into it. What you see here is Spirit Tracks, and the boss fight with Chancellor Cole, if you can call it that. This fight takes place between two amazing fights between the Demon Train and the final fight with Miletus? I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. Someone will correct me in the comments. Anyways, the point of the fight is to get Zelda to walk from point A to point B. That's it. This fight is so tedious and bad, it makes walking a pain in my ass. There really isn't too much I can say here. Like, you draw a line on the ground and make Zelda walk from where she starts over to her body so she can take it back. And during this process of walking, rats will appear that you must kill before they take over Zelda and allow Cole to control her. These mice can be a huge pain in the ass, and can only take a few seconds of adjusting Zelda's walking path to not notice that they've spawned and completely take over Zelda. And once Cole has control of Zelda, he'll start attacking you with her, and she'll slowly walk back towards where you started, causing you to lose progress towards finishing the fight. And to free her from his control, it's not that hard, it's just a quick boomerang swing and problem solved. This fight is just the laziest thing ever, and could have just been solved with a quick cutscene, but instead we have to sit through this. I hated Spirit Tracks, and it's actually my least favorite Zelda game, but I really was enjoying the ending till this point. If Spirit Tracks just ended with the Demon Train and then the Ganon ripoff fight, I would have been happy. But with this ending, no, not at all. It was a displeasing experience from start to end. I really hope you all enjoyed the video. It's been a long time since I've made a top 10, and I really enjoyed coming back to it and doing another one after so long. So feel free to post in the comments below what your most hated Zelda boss is. I'm interested to kind of like tally through and see what everyone's most hated boss is and what shows up the most. I'm guessing the Imprisoned, but I might be wrong. And until then, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, share the love, all that fun stuff if you feel like it, and I'll see you all around in the next episode.